The book of Esther is one of the most fascinating books in the Old Testament. In it, we find so much intrigue and such a clear example of how God can provide for you. Hey, this week, I want to welcome you to the Midweek Refill. I'm Bishop A. Reginald Littman, and we're starting a brand new series of teachings entitled For Such a Time as This, as we walk together through the book of Esther. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the Midweek Refill. I'm your host, Bishop A. Reginald Littman. Please don't forget to check the link in the description box below for a free PDF handout that will provide you with very pertinent information to help you in your study as we continue through this series on the book of Esther. And it's a free PDF handout. I want you to not only get it, but share it with someone you love. Create your own Bible study experience and share with them from God's Word so that they too can grow through this very informative study. Again, welcome to For Such a Time as This. So in this first episode, this first installment of our series on the book of Esther, we're going to be talking about how we can see God's hand literally behind the scene. We're looking at exploring the depths of providence and seeing how God is always at work behind the scenes. Well, what is providence, you might say? Well, friends, providence is not just a word, but it is a profound concept that literally reveals the loving care and divine guidance of our Heavenly Father. Providence is all about recognizing that every twist, every turn, and every circumstance in our lives is orchestrated by God's unseen hand. And always, and in all things, and at all points, God's unseen hand working behind the scene is always for our ultimate good. You know, I love Romans 8:28 that reminds us in Paul's words in Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose, which means if it ain't good, it ain't over yet, because all things work together for good. So it's not, if it's not good yet, it means that God's not done with it yet. So let that be a little bit of encouragement right up front with this understanding of God's hand that is always at work behind the scenes for our ultimate good. So let's delve into this together. Providence can be best understood as the protective care of God. It is his divine guidance, and it is the way that God orchestrates events according to his divine purposes for our life. It's the assurance that nothing just happens. Providence is the assurance that we have as believers that things work according to divine purpose. And it's that assurance, family, that lets us know that nothing just happens by mere chance, but rather everything unfolds within the framework of God's sovereign plan for our lives. Now, here's a remarkable point that we find in this amazing story and that we find even in our everyday lives. And that is this: God's providence isn't always immediately evident. You know, there's sometimes that God moves behind the scenes without the benefit of our knowing exactly what God is going to do and how God is going to work things out. But what we have is a blessed assurance that behind the scenes, even when we can't see, even when we don't know, even when we have no idea of what God is up to, somewhere behind the scenes, God is guiding events and God is orchestrating people in ways that may seem mysterious to our finite minds. But listen, I want to encourage you, fear not. Even when his workings seem obscure, we can trust in God's wisdom and we can embrace his perfect timing. So consider this, my friends. Have you ever looked back on your life and seen God's hand at work in ways that you never imagined? You see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's in hindsight that we recognize the intricate threads of God's providential care that is woven throughout our complete journey of life. So let's share our stories and let's dive into the scriptures and let's discover together how God's providence literally shapes our lives. Through the personal experiences and biblical examples that you'll find in the handout that goes along with the teaching, we're going to uncover the beautiful tapestry of God's providence, revealing how seemingly random events are intricately connected within God's grand design for things. And oh, what a joy it is to explore the depths of God's providence together. As you look back over what God has done and orchestrated, sometimes I think you'll be amazed to see his hand has been at work the entire time. So, discovering God's divine majesty and Esther's splendor is what I want to move to next. Because in the magnificent tapestry of the book of Esther, we find ourselves transported to a world that was brimming with opulence, intrigue, and even clandestine agendas. Oh, what a sight it is when you look at Esther. Yet, my dear friends, amidst the splendor of this royal court, we may not hear the trumpets announcing God's presence. But mark my words, as you go through this book, you'll discover his divine providence is at work, orchestrating every single detail of the unfolding drama. So let's look at Esther chapter 1 and chapter 2 together.
Esther 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces, that in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan, the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple, to silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver, upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble. And they gave them drink in the vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse from one another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel, for so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house, that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Also, Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbonah, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zetar, and Karkas, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king, with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. And the next unto him was Karshena, Shetar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes, and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen, Thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus. And let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give their husbands honor, both to great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people.
Chapter 1 of Esther is an intriguing story, isn't it? We see the spanning empire of Xerxes as it goes all the way from India to Kush. And King Xerxes hosts an extravagant banquet showcasing his wealth and his power to his nobles and the officials there for an astonishing 180 days. And following this prolonged display, he throws a separate 7-day feast open to all in the citadel of Susa, featuring opulent decorations and an abundance of wine. And during the festivities, Queen Vashti hosts her own banquet for the women. Of course, keeping in mind that men and women typically did not share the same quarters in terms of public interaction. So this was nothing, tremendously unusual. However, tensions begin to arise when King Xerxes, in his states of high spirits, and I do mean the kind that come in bottles, demands that Queen Vashti's presence at his feast, intending to display her beauty to his guest. He wanted to put her on display as an exhibition. And when Queen Vashti refuses the king's command, it incites his fury. He just loses it. So as we reflect on this chapter, we're reminded of the fleeting nature of earthly wealth and power. Because despite King Xerxes' immense authority, his story reveals the limitation of human control and leadership. Furthermore, Queen Vashti's defiance highlights the consequences of pride and disobedience. Through Esther chapter number 1, we're encouraged to seek humility before God, recognizing his ultimate sovereignty over all earthly powers. It serves as a poignant reminder that true fulfillment and lasting joy are found in submission to God's will rather than the pursuit of temporal pleasures. So let's learn some lessons that are deeply embedded within Esther chapter 1 about turning to God for wisdom and for guidance in every single aspect of our lives. Well, if you thought Esther chapter 1 was something, Esther chapter 2 is also quite amazing.
Esther 2. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti, and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, Let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hege, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them, and let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. And the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her, out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house, to know how Esther did, and what should become of her. Now when every maid's turn was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. Then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women, unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shaashgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Hegai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus, into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebet, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women. And she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head, and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces, and gave gifts, according to the state of the king. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, 2 of the king's chamberlains, Bigtan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree. And it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king.
Because here in Esther chapter 2, friends, we witness the unfolding of a divine plan amidst the corridors of power. Because after the tumultuous events of Esther chapter 1, King Xerxes finds himself in search of a new queen. The king is on the hunt for a new queen, and he wants to fill the vacancy that has now been left by Queen Vashti. Can you imagine the anticipation as the king's servants begin to embark on a quest to find the most beautiful maidens from every corner of the kingdom? And among these maidens is Esther, a Jewish orphan who had been raised by her cousin Mordecai. Little did she know that she would be the one that would be destined for greatness. And Esther, guided by her unwavering faith and her inner beauty, captures the king's heart, and Esther is crowned as the new queen of Persia. It's really a testament to God's providence, friends, how God can orchestrate events in our lives to fulfill his divine purpose for our lives. But guess what? The story doesn't end there. Because in the midst of Esther's newfound royalty, Mordecai now uncovers a plot to assassinate the king. And yet, through Esther's intervention, the plot is foiled, and Mordecai's loyalty is recorded in the King's Chronicles, which is a reminder that what we do for others, God will in turn make it happen for us. So as we think about Esther chapter 2, let us be reminded of God's faithfulness in our own lives. Just as he elevated Esther from obscurity to royalty, God has a plan to elevate each and every one of us to new levels of influence, as well as to new places of purpose. So let's trust in God's timing and in God's perfect plan, knowing that he has destined every single one of us for greatness in this world. And you know what? Through Esther's journey, may we find inspiration to walk in faith and to walk in obedience, trusting that God's blessings are abundant and his favor is also upon us. First and foremost, Esther's story is a powerful reminder that God's providence is at work even in the most unlikely of circumstances. And here we have a young Jewish girl, orphaned and seemingly insignificant, at least in the eyes of the world around her, yet chosen by God for a very specific and divine purpose. And friends, this is a testament to the fact that God sees beyond our circumstances. God knows the plans he has for each and every one of us. And Esther's journey from orphan to queen is a testament to the transformative power of faith and obedience. When we trust God, God will set us up for such a time as this. Despite the challenges and the uncertainties that she was going to face, Esther remained steadfast in her trust in God, and she embraced her identity as a daughter of God and allowed God's wisdom and guidance to direct her steps. And in doing so, she not only found favor in the eyes of the king, but also played a very crucial role in fulfilling God's greater plan for his people. Esther's relationship with Mordecai serves as a beautiful example of the importance of godly mentorship and community. Mordecai, as Esther's cousin and guardian, provided guidance and support and wisdom throughout her journey. And his engagement and his counsel would be instrumental in shaping Esther into the courageous and wise woman that she became. I want to challenge you, begin to cherish even more the relationships that God has placed in your life, knowing that they are instruments of his grace and guidance. Esther's courage in exposing the plot to assassinate the king demonstrates the power of speaking truth and standing up for what is right, even in the face of danger. She risked her own safety to protect the king and to ensure stability in the kingdom. And in doing so, she exemplified the values of integrity, righteousness, selflessness. May we be inspired by Esther's example to speak truth boldly and to act with courage and with conviction, knowing that God is always with us and his purposes will always prevail. You know, Esther chapter number 2 is not just a historical account, but a timeless testament to the faithfulness, sovereignty, and the goodness of God. And it reminds us that no matter our circumstances, God is at work in our lives, guiding us, transforming us, and using us for his glory. So let us embrace our identity as children of God, walk in faith, walk in obedience, cherish our relationships, and stand courageously for truth, knowing that God's plan for us is always for our good and for his glory. Now, Esther's narrative serves as a radiant beacon illuminating the truth that God's presence is not always loud and thunderous, but often soft and gentle, like a whisper in the wind. And it beckons us to ponder the intricate dance between human choices and divine intervention, revealing the unseen thread of God's providential care that is interwoven throughout all of our history's fabric. Now, turn your attention with me again to this powerful verse in Romans 8:28. We find strength in the book of Romans. We're reminded and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And what a powerful and comforting assurance that is, my friends, to know that God is at work on our behalf in all situations. There's not one situation that God is not at work behind the scenes on our behalf. So as we meditate on the words of Paul and even on the tale of Esther, let us begin to sort of embrace the truth that God's redemptive purposes are always at play, even in the midst of life's complexities and even in the midst of life's uncertainties. So, friends, let us trust in the hidden yet unwavering presence of God, knowing that he is working all things together for our ultimate good. Even when the path ahead seems obscured from our immediate understanding. Do you trust God? Well, listen, when you read the book of Esther, you'll discover you have every reason in the world to trust God because his hand is at work behind the scenes. Listen, I hope that you got something out of our expose of part 1 of our study from the book of Esther. Do not forget, whatever you do, that right down there in the description box below is a free PDF handout. It's got full notes, and you can go back over the entire story that we have shared for this part of our series on Esther. I want you to get it because in it you will find some discovery questions that will help you take a deeper dive into the scripture and to actually see how God is and has been at work behind the scenes in your own life. I'm Bishop A. Reginald Littman, and you're watching the Midweek Refill. Until next time, you go with God.